The dry summer heat rippled across the horizon like a mirage as Olivia Evans stumbled toward the small wooden depot, her vision blurring with each painful step. 3 days without food and only sips of brackish water had taken their toll, leaving her once sturdy frame weak and her mind foggy. The train to Sacramento was her last hope, but as the weathered building came into view, black spots danced before her eyes, and the ground rushed up to meet her. Wyoming Territory, 1876. The railroad had brought progress and people, but for 20-year-old Olivia, it had only brought heartache. Following her parents' death from fever 6 months prior, she'd been forced to leave their failed homestead, with nothing but a small satchel of belongings and the clothes on her back. The journey west had depleted what little money she'd managed to save. Now, as consciousness slipped away, she wondered if this dusty train platform would be her final resting place. Rough hands gently lifted her head, and something cool pressed against her cracked lips. Water. Sweet, blessed water trickled into her mouth, and Olivia's eyes fluttered open to meet the concerned gaze of a stranger. "Easy now, miss," a deep voice rumbled. "Take it slow." Through the haze, she made out sun-bronzed skin, a strong jaw shadowed with stubble, and eyes the color of a summer storm. A cowboy hat shaded his features, but she could see the worry etched across his face. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Name's Reid Jackson," he said, supporting her as she struggled to sit up. "You picked a mighty dangerous place to take a rest." A weak smile touched her lips. "Wasn't exactly planned." Reid helped her to a nearby bench, keeping a steadying hand on her arm. Up close, Olivia could see he was young, perhaps mid-20s, with a lean, muscular build that spoke of hard work. His clothes were dusty but well kept, a blue cotton shirt rolled at the sleeves, worn leather vest, and faded denim trousers tucked into scuffed boots. "When's the last time you ate?" he asked, his eyes traveling over her pale face and the visible hollows beneath her cheekbones. "Day before yesterday," she admitted. "Just a crust of bread." Without hesitation, Reid reached into his saddlebag and produced jerky and hardtack. "It ain't much, but it'll keep you going." Olivia tried to refuse, pride warring with hunger, but her stomach betrayed her with a loud growl. Reid's gentle laugh broke through her embarrassment. "No sense in starving yourself on account of pride, miss. We've all needed help at some point." As she ate small, careful bites, Reid filled his canteen from the depot's water pump. His horse, a magnificent chestnut stallion, stood patiently nearby, occasionally nickering softly. The animal's coat gleamed in the afternoon sun, well-groomed despite the dust of travel. "Where are you headed?" Reid asked when he returned, settling beside her on the bench. "Sacramento," Olivia replied. "My aunt lives there. At least, I hope she still does. Haven't heard from her in years." Reid's expression sobered. "Next train west isn't due for 3 days." The news hit Olivia like a physical blow. 3 more days without shelter or food. She had no money for a room at the boarding house, and her body couldn't withstand much more hardship. Despair must have shown on her face because Reid cleared his throat. "I've got a ranch about 5 miles south of here. Nothing fancy, but there's a spare room and plenty of food. You're welcome to stay until the train comes." Suspicion flared immediately. Olivia had encountered enough men on her journey to know that offers of charity often came with expectations. "That's very kind, but I couldn't impose." "No imposition," Reid said firmly. "My sister Hannah lives with me. She'd be glad for the company of another woman." His eyes met hers directly. "I give you my word as a gentleman, miss. You'll be safe." Something in his steady gaze convinced her, or perhaps it was simply that she had no other options. Either way, Olivia found herself nodding. "Thank you, Mr. Jackson." "Reid," he corrected with a smile that transformed his serious face. "Mr. Jackson was my father." With surprising gentleness for a man who clearly worked with his hands, Reid helped Olivia to her feet and guided her toward his horse. "This is Thunder," he said, patting the animal's neck. "Best horse in the territory." The stallion sniffed at Olivia's outstretched hand, then bumped his velvety nose against her palm in greeting. Despite her exhaustion, she smiled. "He's beautiful." "And he knows it," Reid chuckled. "Too smart for his own good sometimes." With efficient movements, Reid adjusted his saddle and helped Olivia mount. Her dress hiked up indecently around her calves, but modesty seemed a small concern compared to survival. Reid swung up behind her, one arm respectfully around her waist to keep her steady. "Hold tight to the pommel," he instructed. "And let me know if you need to stop." The journey to Reid's ranch passed in a blur for Olivia. The gentle swaying motion of the horse nearly lulled her back to unconsciousness, and only Reid's solid presence kept her upright. The landscape gradually changed from flat, dusty plains to rolling hills dotted with cottonwoods and scrub pine. As they crested a rise, Reid's ranch came into view. It wasn't the largest spread Olivia had seen, but it was well-maintained, a sturdy two-story house built of logs and stone, a large barn, corrals, and several outbuildings. Cattle grazed in distant pastures, and smoke curled invitingly from the house's stone chimney. "It's not much," Reid said, echoing his earlier words, "but it's home." "It's lovely," Olivia murmured, meaning it. A tall, slender woman, with hair the same rich brown as Reid's, emerged from the house as they approached, wiping her hands on an apron. Her curious expression quickly turned to concern when she spotted Olivia. "Reid, what's happened?" she called, hurrying toward them. "Found this lady collapsed at the depot," Reid explained as he dismounted and reached up to help Olivia down. "She needs food and rest before her train on Friday. Miss Evans, this is my sister, Hannah." "Olivia, please," she said, suddenly self-conscious about her dirty dress and tangled hair. Hannah's warm smile dispelled her worries. "Well, Olivia, you look about ready to fall over again. Let's get you inside and settled." The inside of the Jackson home was modest but comfortable, with handcrafted furniture, colorful quilts, and the unmistakable scent of home cooking. Hannah led Olivia to a small bedroom off the main living area. "This was our mother's sewing room," she explained, "but the daybed's comfortable enough. Rest a while, and I'll draw you a bath. Supper's in 2 hours." Overwhelmed by the kindness of these strangers, Olivia could only nod her thanks before sinking onto the bed. Sleep claimed her instantly. When she awoke, the room was bathed in golden afternoon light. A copper tub steamed in the corner, and a clean dress, obviously Hannah's, lay across a chair. Olivia luxuriated in the hot bath, scrubbing away days of travel grime, and allowing herself, just for a moment, to feel human again. Dressed in Hannah's borrowed clothes, which were a bit long but otherwise fit well enough, Olivia followed the enticing smells to the kitchen. Hannah stood at the stove stirring a pot of stew, while Reid set the table. "There she is," Hannah said cheerfully. "I was beginning to think you'd sleep through supper." "I apologize for imposing," Olivia began, but Reid cut her off. "No apologies needed. Hannah's been itching for company anyway." Hannah playfully swatted her brother with a wooden spoon. "Ignore him. I'm delighted to have another woman around." Reid's conversation tends to revolve around cattle and weather. Reid's mock offense made Olivia laugh, surprising herself with the sound. It had been months since she'd had anything to laugh about. Over a hearty meal of venison stew, fresh bread, and apple preserves, Olivia found herself sharing her story. The fever that had taken her parents, the creditors who'd taken their land, her desperate journey west with dwindling resources. "My Aunt Catherine is my only remaining family," she explained. "She moved to Sacramento after marrying a shopkeeper 15 years ago. I pray she's still there." "And if she isn't?" Reid asked quietly. Olivia stared at her empty bowl. "I don't know. Find work, I suppose. I can sew, cook, clean, whatever's needed." "You could stay," Hannah suggested, ignoring her brother's startled look. "We could use help around here. And I've been wanting to expand our vegetable garden." "Hannah," Reid cautioned, but his sister pressed on. "We'd pay fair wages, provide room and board, at least until you get on your feet." The offer was tempting, more than tempting. But Olivia had learned the hard way that security could vanish in an instant. "That's very kind, but I should continue to Sacramento. My aunt is expecting me." It wasn't entirely true she'd sent a letter, but had no way of knowing if it had arrived, yet it felt safer than admitting she had nowhere else to go. Later, as Hannah showed her around the ranch, Olivia couldn't help admiring what the Jacksons had built. Beyond the main house and barn were carefully tended fields, a chicken coop, a smokehouse, and a spring-fed pond. Several ranch hands lived in a bunkhouse near the corrals, though Hannah explained they were currently out with the herd. "Reid's worked himself half to death building this place," Hannah said as they paused by the garden. Our parents died when I was 16 and Reid was 20. The ranch was struggling then, but Reid refused to sell. Said he promised Pa he'd keep it going. He's done remarkably well, Olivia observed, watching Reid in the distance as he mended a section of fence, his movements efficient and practiced. Yes, but at what cost? Hannah sighed. He never takes time for himself. No social calls, no dances, nothing but work from sunrise to sunset. No sweetheart? Olivia asked, then blushed at her own forwardness. Hannah's knowing smile made her blush deepen. There was a girl in town, Elizabeth Porter, but that ended badly 2 years ago. She wanted city life, not a rancher's wife. Hannah studied Olivia's face carefully. Reid needs someone who appreciates this life. Someone strong enough to face its challenges. Before Olivia could respond to the obvious hint, Reid approached, wiping sweat from his brow with a bandana. Giving the full tour, Hannah? Just the highlights, his sister replied innocently. I was about to show Olivia the orchard. Mind if I tag along? I could use a break. The small apple orchard behind the house was Reid's pride, Hannah explained. He'd planted the saplings himself after their parents died, nurturing them through drought and harsh winters. First good harvest was last fall, Reid said, touching a branch with surprising tenderness. Ma always wanted fruit trees. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Olivia felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. For the first time in months, the constant knot of anxiety in her chest loosened slightly. Here, in this moment, she was safe. The evening passed comfortably with Reid reading aloud from a dog-eared copy of The Pickwick Papers, while Hannah mended clothes and Olivia helped by threading needles and sorting buttons. The domesticity of it all made her heart ache with longing for what she'd lost. That night, lying in the soft daybed, Olivia stared at the ceiling and wondered if she was making a mistake by continuing to Sacramento. What if her aunt wasn't there? What if she was turned away? Hannah's offer of work seemed more appealing by the hour, but pride and fear kept her from accepting. Better to move on than to grow attached to another place, another family, only to lose them. Morning brought a flurry of activity as Reid prepared to ride out with his men to check on a herd in the north pasture. Olivia joined Hannah in the kitchen, insisting on helping with breakfast despite her hostess's protests. You're still recovering, Hannah argued, but relented when Olivia demonstrated her skill with biscuits. Reid entered as they worked, his presence filling the small kitchen. Something smells good. Olivia's biscuits, Hannah said proudly. Wait until you taste them. Breakfast was a lively affair, with 3 ranch hands joining them at the table. The men were respectful but curious about Olivia, asking polite questions between hearty bites of food. She found herself relaxing in their company, even laughing at the good-natured teasing between Reid and his foreman, a weathered man named Frank. These biscuits are a sight better than Hannah's, Frank declared, earning a glare from Hannah and chuckles from the others. Mind your manners, Frank, Reid warned, though his eyes crinkled with amusement, or you'll be eating your own cooking again. After the men departed, Hannah enlisted Olivia's help with laundry. The physical work felt good after days of travel, and Olivia found herself enjoying the simple task of scrubbing clothes clean in the wooden tubs behind the house. Reid seems well respected by his men, she commented as they hung sheets to dry. They'd follow him anywhere, Hannah agreed. He's fair and never asks them to do work he wouldn't do himself. She paused, pinning a pillowcase to the line. I saw how he looked at you during breakfast. Olivia nearly dropped the wet shirt she was holding. I'm sure I don't know what you mean. He hasn't looked at anyone that way since Elizabeth, Hannah persisted. Not that I blame him, she broke his heart something terrible. Hannah, please, Olivia protested, her cheeks burning. Your brother was kind enough to help a stranger in need, that's all. Hannah looked unconvinced but mercifully changed the subject. As they worked side by side throughout the morning, Olivia learned more about the Jacksons' life. Their parents had come west from Pennsylvania, establishing the ranch when Reid was just a boy. They'd weathered drought, harsh winters, and threats from cattle rustlers. The siblings had faced their own challenges since inheriting the property rebuilding after a fire destroyed the original barn, fighting off attempts by a larger rancher to force them to sell, enduring seasons of poor grazing that threatened their herd. Reid never considered giving up, Hannah said proudly. even when the bank threatened foreclosure 2 years ago. He worked from dawn till midnight, took odd jobs in town, anything to keep the ranch. The picture Hannah painted was of a man of extraordinary determination and integrity. Olivia found herself increasingly drawn to Reid Jackson, though she tried to dismiss it as simple gratitude for his kindness. That afternoon, Hannah announced they needed supplies from town and suggested Olivia accompany her. "You'll want to check on train tickets anyway," she pointed out. The settlement of Pine Creek was small but growing, with a general store, saloon, blacksmith, church, and the train depot where Reid had found Olivia. As they walked from the wagon to the store, Olivia noticed curious glances from townsfolk. "Word travels fast in small towns," Hannah explained. "Everyone's wondering who you are." In the general store, they encountered a well-dressed woman who eyed Olivia with undisguised interest. "Hannah Jackson, aren't you going to introduce your friend?" "Mrs. Porter, this is Olivia Evans. She's staying with us until the Friday train." "How interesting," Mrs. Porter replied, her smile not reaching her eyes. "And how did you come to meet the Jacksons, Miss Evans?" Before Olivia could respond, Hannah smoothly intervened. "Olivia is a family friend from back east. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have errands to complete." As they moved away, Hannah muttered, "Elizabeth's mother, biggest gossip in 3 counties. By sundown, there'll be 6 different stories about why you're at our ranch." "I hope I haven't caused trouble?" Olivia worried. "Nonsense, let them talk." Hannah selected items from the shelves with practiced efficiency. "Though it might be wise to check on your train ticket while I finish here." At the depot, Olivia received unwelcome news. "Friday train's been delayed, miss," the station master informed her. "Track repairs further west. Won't be through until Monday at the earliest." 3 more days. Olivia tried to hide her dismay as she thanked him and rejoined Hannah outside the store. "Well?" Hannah asked, loading packages into their wagon. "Monday now," Olivia admitted. "I should find other accommodations. I've imposed on your hospitality too long already." Hannah waved away her concerns. "Don't be ridiculous. Reid would have my hide if I let you stay at that flea trap they call a hotel." Her expression softened. "Besides, I've enjoyed having you. It gets lonely being the only woman on the ranch." On the ride back, they passed a rider heading toward them, Reid, returning earlier than expected. He reined in beside their wagon, his expression grave. "Everything all right?" Hannah asked. "Frank spotted signs of rustlers near the north boundary," Reid explained. "I came to warn you to be careful around the ranch. Keep the shotgun handy." His eyes met Olivia's. "I heard in town the train's delayed." "Until Monday," she confirmed, "but I can find other arrangements." "You'll stay with us," he said firmly. "It's not safe for a woman alone in town, especially with rustlers about." Something in his tone made Olivia's heart beat faster. Concern, certainly, but something more. Proprietary almost. As if her welfare mattered to him personally, not just as a charitable obligation. Back at the ranch, Reid gathered his men to discuss strategy. Cattle rustling was a serious threat to small ranchers who couldn't afford the losses. Through the kitchen window, Olivia watched Reid gesture and explain, the men listening intently. There was something compelling about him in that moment, confident, capable, a natural leader. "He's good at this," Hannah said, joining her at the window. "Pa always said Reid was born to ranching like a fish to water." That evening, the atmosphere was tense. Reid posted a man to keep watch, and the shotgun Hannah mentioned leaned against the wall near the door. Despite the circumstances, supper was a pleasant affair, with Reid recounting humorous stories about his early ranching days. "First time I tried to rope a steer, I ended up dragged halfway across the pasture," he admitted, making both women laugh. "Pa couldn't stop laughing long enough to help me." After dinner, Hannah excused herself to visit a neighbor who was ill, leaving Reid and Olivia alone. An awkward silence fell between them, as Reid stoked the fire, and Olivia pretended interest in her mending. "I hope you're feeling better," Reid finally said. "You had me worried at the depot." "Much better, thanks to you and Hannah." Olivia set aside her sewing. "I don't know how to thank you properly." "No thanks needed." Reid settled into the chair opposite her. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," Olivia said softly. "Not anyone. Most would have walked by, or worse." Reid studied her face in the firelight. "You've had a hard time of it, haven't you?" The simple question, asked with such genuine concern, broke something inside her. Tears welled in Olivia's eyes despite her efforts to contain them. "I'm sorry," she whispered, horrified at her display of weakness. In 2 strides, Reid was kneeling beside her chair, his hand covering hers. "Don't apologize for feeling, Olivia. God knows you've earned those tears." She couldn't remember the last time someone had comforted her. Since her parents' deaths, she'd been entirely alone, forcing herself to be strong because there was no other option. Reid's compassion unleashed months of bottled grief and fear. Without thinking, she leaned forward until her forehead rested against his shoulder. His arms came around her hesitantly, then more securely as her tears soaked his shirt. "It's all right," he murmured, one hand gently stroking her hair. "You're safe now." When her tears finally subsided, embarrassment flooded her. "I've ruined your shirt," she said, pulling back. "I've got others." His smile was gentle, his eyes kind. "Feel better?" Surprisingly, she did. "Yes, thank you." She wiped her cheeks with her sleeve. "I don't usually fall apart like that." Sometimes we all need to fall apart a little. Reid returned to his chair, giving her space to compose herself. "After our parents died, I rode out to the far pasture and yelled until I was hoarse, scared the cattle half to death." The mental image made her smile despite herself. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the crackling fire the only sound. Reid was the first to speak again. "What will you do if your aunt isn't in Sacramento?" It was the question Olivia had been avoiding, even in her own thoughts. "Find work, I suppose. I'm not afraid of hard labor." "And if she is there, what then?" Olivia considered this. "Help in her husband's shop, maybe. Learn a trade." "Is that what you want?" Reid pressed. "Working in a shop in the city?" "What I want doesn't matter much," she replied honestly. "What matters is survival." Reid leaned forward, his gaze intense. "It should matter. You should have choices, not just necessities." His words stirred something in her, a long, dormant hope that life could be more than mere survival. Before she could respond, the front door opened and Hannah returned, bringing with her a gust of cool evening air and news from the neighbor. Later that night, lying awake, Olivia replayed the conversation with Reid. What did she want? For so long, her only goal had been getting through each day. The idea of having choices, of building a life based on desire rather than desperation, was almost too much to contemplate. And what of Reid Jackson? In just 2 days, he'd become more than a kind stranger. His steady presence, his quiet strength, his obvious devotion to his home and family, all of it called to something deep within her. But she was leaving on Monday. There was no sense in dwelling on impossible dreams. The next morning dawned clear and cool. Olivia woke early, determined to make herself useful during her remaining days at the ranch. She found Reid already in the kitchen, brewing coffee. "Hannah's feeling poorly," he explained. "Headache. I told her to rest." "I can make breakfast," Olivia offered, rolling up her sleeves. "It's the least I can do." Working together in the kitchen, they fell into an easy rhythm. Reid knew his way around a stove better than most men, and Olivia found herself enjoying their collaboration. By the time the ranch hands arrived for breakfast, they had produced a hearty meal of flapjacks, bacon, and eggs. "Miss Evans," Frank said appreciatively as he cleaned his plate, "if you're looking for a husband, I'm available." "Mind yourself, Frank," Reid warned, though his tone was light. "Miss Evans has plans that don't include marrying an old coot like you." The men laughed, and Olivia found herself joining in, touched by how easily they'd accepted her presence. For a brief, traitorous moment, she imagined herself as part of this community, part of this ranch, part of Reid's life. With Hannah resting, Olivia took on household tasks, determined to repay the Jacksons' kindness with hard work. She was in the garden, harvesting vegetables for supper, when Reid found her. "You don't have to work so hard," he said, crouching beside her to help fill the basket. "You're our guest." "I want to," she insisted. "I've never been good at sitting idle." Reid nodded in understanding. "Another thing we have in common." He picked a ripe tomato and placed it carefully in the basket. "I was heading to check the south pasture fence. Would you like to come along? It's a pretty ride." The invitation surprised and pleased her. "I'd like that very much." Reid saddled Thunder and a gentle mare named Daisy for Olivia. She's sweet-tempered, he assured her, when Olivia admitted she wasn't an experienced rider. Just follow my lead. The south pasture lay beyond a small creek, and the ride there was indeed beautiful. Wildflowers dotted the rolling hills, and the distant mountains provided a majestic backdrop. Reid pointed out landmarks and shared stories about the land, the spot where he'd shot his first deer, the creek where he and Hannah had caught frogs as children, the old oak where his father had often rested during long days of work. You love this place deeply, Olivia observed as they paused to let the horses drink from the creek. It's in my blood, Reid admitted. Can't imagine being anywhere else. He glanced at her. Do you miss your home? Olivia considered the question. I miss what it was when my parents were alive, the farm itself. It was never really successful. My father tried, but he wasn't born to farming. What was he born to? Books, ideas. She smiled at the memory. He was a school teacher back east before he got the Western fever. Brought a trunk full of books with us instead of practical tools. Sounds like a man who valued the right things, Reid said. Yes, he did. Olivia watched a butterfly dance across the water. He taught me to read Shakespeare by firelight when I was 8. Mother said it was impractical, but he insisted knowledge was never wasted. He was right. Reid's expression was thoughtful. My father was the opposite practical to a fault. Books were for winter evenings when outside work was impossible, but he taught me everything I know about ranching. They continued their ride, checking the fence line for damage. Reid showed Olivia how to spot signs of weakness in the posts and wires, explaining the constant maintenance required to keep cattle contained. It never ends, he said, dismounting to tighten a loose section. Fix one part, another breaks. Like life, Olivia commented, watching him work. His hands were strong and capable, his movements efficient. Reid glanced up with a smile that made her heart skip. Exactly like life. On their return journey, they took a different route that led them past a small, crystal-clear pond surrounded by cottonwoods. My favorite spot on the ranch, Reid said, reining in thunder. Mind if we stop a moment? They sat on sun-warmed rocks by the water's edge, sharing the lunch Hannah had packed for them. The peaceful setting and Reid's companionable presence lulled Olivia into a sense of contentment she hadn't felt in months. Tell me about your dreams, Reid said suddenly. Before everything changed, what did you want from life? The question caught her off guard. I wanted to teach, like my father, she admitted. Perhaps have a small school somewhere. And a family, of course. She plucked a blade of grass, twisting it between her fingers. Simple things? The best dreams often are. Reid skimmed a stone across the pond's surface, watching it bounce 4 times before sinking. I always wanted to expand the ranch, raise the finest cattle in the territory. He paused. And find someone to share it with. Someone who loves this land as much as I do. The air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken possibilities. Olivia's heart raced as Reid's eyes met hers, a question in their depths that she wasn't ready to answer. We should head back, she said, breaking the moment. Hannah will worry. The ride back to the ranch was quieter, each lost in their own thoughts. As they approached the house, Olivia caught sight of Hannah watching from the porch, her expression speculative. Feeling better? Reid called to his sister as they dismounted. Much, Hannah replied, her eyes moving between them. You two were gone a while. Checking fences, Reid explained, helping Olivia down from Daisy. His hands lingered at her waist a moment longer than necessary. Of course, Hannah said, clearly unconvinced. Well, come inside. I've made lemonade. That evening, after supper, Reid announced his intention to ride into town. Need to speak with the sheriff about those rustlers, he explained. Don't wait up. After he'd gone, Hannah sat beside Olivia on the porch swing, a knowing smile playing on her lips. I haven't seen my brother volunteer to check fences in years, she remarked. Usually has to be dragged away from the cattle ledgers. Hannah, Olivia began, not sure how to respond. He likes you, Hannah stated simply. More than likes you, I'd wager. I'm leaving in 2 days, Olivia reminded her. There's no point in anything developing. Hannah's expression sobered. Is Sacramento so important? Or is it just the only path you've allowed yourself to consider? The question hit uncomfortably close to the mark. Was she clinging to her plan out of necessity or fear? Fear of change, fear of disappointment, fear of allowing herself to hope for more. "I hardly know your brother," she protested weakly. "Sometimes it doesn't take long to know what matters," Hannah replied. "My parents met and married within a month. They had 40 happy years together before pneumonia took them both." Olivia stared out at the darkening landscape. "Even if I wanted to stay, I have nothing to offer. No money, no dowry, no skills beyond basic housekeeping." Hannah laughed softly. "If you think Reid Jackson cares about dowries, you don't know him at all." She patted Olivia's hand. "Just think about it. That's all I'm asking." Sleep eluded Olivia that night. Hannah's words echoed in her mind, along with memories of the day spent with Reid. His smile, his gentle hands, the way he spoke about his land with such passion. In just 3 days, he'd awakened feelings she'd thought long buried beneath grief and survival. But was it enough? Could she really change the course of her life based on such a brief acquaintance? And what if Reid didn't feel the same way? Hannah might be misreading her brother's kindness as something more. Dawn found her still awake, no closer to answers. She rose quietly and made her way to the kitchen, intending to start breakfast before the others woke. To her surprise, Reid was already there, looking as though he hadn't slept either. "Morning," he greeted her, pouring coffee into a mug and offering it to her. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," she admitted, accepting the coffee gratefully. "You?" "Same." He leaned against the counter, studying her face. "Sheriff's forming a posse. The rustlers hit the Davidson place last night." "That's terrible," Olivia said, genuinely concerned. She'd heard enough about cattle rustling to know it could ruin a small rancher. "Will you join them?" Reid nodded. "Leaving after breakfast. Frank will stay behind with 2 men to keep an eye on things here." Fear clutched at Olivia's heart. She'd heard stories of posses returning with wounded or dead men. "Is it dangerous?" "Can be," Reid acknowledged, "but Davidson's a friend. Can't let rustlers think they can operate freely in this valley." They worked side by side, preparing breakfast, the air between them charged with unspoken emotions. As Reid reached past her for plates, their arms brushed, and Olivia felt a jolt of awareness that left her breathless. "Olivia," Reid said softly, setting down the plates. "There's something I need to say before I go." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "Yes? I know you've only been here a few days. I know you have plans, a destination in mind." He took a deep breath. "But I believe you were meant to be here, that it wasn't chance that brought you to that depot when I was passing by." She couldn't look away from his intense gaze. "Reid, let me finish," he said gently. "I'm not asking for promises. I'm just asking you to consider staying, not as our guest, but to see if there might be something worth building here. Between us." The words she'd both hoped for and dreaded hung in the air between them. Before she could respond, Hannah appeared in the doorway, her expression apologetic. "Reid, Frank needs you at the barn. Something about Thunder's shoe." With a regretful glance at Olivia, Reid nodded and left. Hannah approached her friend, concern evident on her face. "Are you all right? You look pale." "He asked me to stay," Olivia whispered. Hannah's face lit up. "And? What did you say?" "Nothing," you interrupted. "Oh!" Hannah's hands flew to her mouth. "I'm so sorry. I didn't realize—" "It's all right," Olivia assured her, though in truth, she was relieved for the reprieve. "I wouldn't have known what to say anyway." "Say yes," Hannah urged. "Stay, at least long enough to see if this could be home." Home. The word resonated deeply within Olivia. Home wasn't just a place. It was security, belonging, connection. Things she'd been without for too long. The sound of hoofbeats drew them to the window. Reid and several ranch hands were mounting up, preparing to join the sheriff's posse. Olivia's decision was momentarily forgotten in the flurry of activity as Hannah packed food for the men, and Reid issued final instructions to those staying behind. Before mounting Thunder, Reid sought out Olivia. "We'll likely be gone overnight," he said, his voice low. "Think about what I said?" "I will," she promised. "Be careful, Reid." His hand briefly covered hers where it rested on the porch railing. "I've got extra reason to come back safe now." With that, he He swung into the saddle and led his men toward town. Olivia watched until they disappeared from sight, her thoughts in turmoil. The day passed slowly. Olivia helped Hannah with chores, but her mind kept returning to Reid's words and the decision before her. By mid-afternoon, dark clouds had gathered on the horizon, promising a summer storm. "Should we be worried?" Olivia asked as they brought in laundry from the line. "About the men in this weather?" "Reid knows these hills better than anyone," Hannah reassured her. "They'll find shelter if needed." The storm broke just before sunset, unleashing sheets of rain driven by howling wind. Olivia and Hannah secured shutters and doors, then settled in the kitchen with mending by lamplight. Thunder crashed overhead, making conversation difficult. "They'll be all right," Hannah repeated, seeing Olivia's concerned glances toward the window. Reid survived worse storms than this. Olivia tried to focus on her sewing, but worry gnawed at her, not just for Reid's physical safety, but for the emotional precipice on which she found herself. If she stayed, she would be choosing a future based on feelings that had developed in mere days. If she left, she might be walking away from the greatest chance at happiness she'd ever know. The storm raged throughout the night. Olivia slept fitfully, waking at every crash of thunder. When dawn finally broke, the rain had subsided to a gentle patter. She rose and joined Hannah in the kitchen, both women anxious for news. Mid-morning brought a rider, not Reid, but Frank, soaked to the skin and grim-faced. "Found the rustlers," he reported as Hannah handed him hot coffee. "Holed up in an abandoned mine south of Davidson's place. There was a fight." Olivia's heart seemed to stop. "Reid?" Frank's expression softened slightly. "He's alive, miss. Took a bullet in the shoulder. Doc Jenkins is tending to him in town." Hannah was already reaching for her shawl. "We'll take the wagon." The ride to town was the longest of Olivia's life. The rain had turned the roads to mud, forcing them to move slowly. Hannah maintained a brave face, but Olivia caught her wiping away tears when she thought no one was looking. Pine Creek's small doctor's office was crowded with men from the posse and concerned townspeople. Sheriff Taylor met them at the door, his expression grave but not despairing. "He'll be all right, Hannah," he assured Reid's sister. "Bullet went clean through. Doc says with rest and care, he should recover fully." "Can we see him?" Hannah asked. "Doc's just finishing up. Give him a few minutes." Those few minutes stretched interminably for Olivia. Her mind conjured terrible images, Reid pale and still, Reid struggling for breath, Reid calling for her when she wasn't there. By the time Dr. Jenkins emerged, she was nearly frantic with worry. "He's asking for you both," the doctor said, wiping blood from his hands with a cloth. "Keep it brief. He needs rest." Reid lay on a narrow bed, his upper body bandaged, his face ashen, but his eyes clear. He managed a weak smile when they entered. "Quite a welcome party," he joked, his voice hoarse. "Told Frank not to scare you." Hannah rushed to his side, taking his hand. "You idiot! What were you thinking, getting yourself shot?" "Wasn't exactly planned," Reid winced as he shifted position. "Davidson's safe, rustlers in jail, worth a little discomfort." "A little discomfort?" Hannah echoed incredulously. "Reid Jackson, you nearly got yourself killed." While Hannah scolded her brother, Olivia hung back, overwhelmed by the strength of her emotions. Seeing Reid wounded had clarified everything. The thought of losing him, of continuing to Sacramento without knowing if he recovered, was unbearable. Reid's eyes found hers over Hannah's shoulder. "Olivia," he called softly. She moved to the opposite side of the bed from Hannah, carefully taking his free hand. "I'm here." "Thought about what I asked?" His direct question, even in his weakened state, was so typically Reid that Olivia felt a surge of affection. "Yes," she said simply. "I'll stay." The joy that transformed his pale face was answer enough that she'd made the right decision. Hannah looked between them, tears and a smile mingling on her face. "About time," she declared. "Now we just have to get this stubborn man well enough to court you properly." Dr. Jenkins insisted Reid remain in town for at least 2 days, to ensure no infection developed in the wound. Hannah and Olivia took rooms at the small hotel nearby, taking turns sitting with him. On the second night, when Hannah had gone to rest, Olivia found herself alone with Reid for the first time since his injury. "I'm sorry," he said, watching her arrange flowers a neighbor had brought. Not exactly how I planned to convince you to stay. Getting shot was part of your strategy? She teased, trying to keep the mood light despite her lingering fear. Seemed dramatic enough to make an impression, he replied with a weak smile. Olivia sat beside his bed, her expression growing serious. You didn't need drama, Reid. Just being yourself was enough. His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. I meant what I said at the ranch. I think you were meant to find your way to us, to me. I was so focused on reaching Sacramento, Olivia admitted, on finding my aunt, on having a plan. I didn't consider that life might have other ideas. And now, she squeezed his hand gently. Now, I think perhaps fainting at that depot was the best thing that ever happened to me. Reid's smile was tender. For both of us. The journey back to the ranch 3 days later was slow and careful. Reid insisted he could ride, but Dr. Jenkins overruled him, ordering him to travel in the wagon on a mattress of quilts. He grumbled about the indignity, but complied when Olivia threatened to continue to Sacramento if he risked his recovery. Unfair tactics, he complained, though his eyes sparkled with good humor. All's fair in love and bullet wounds, she retorted, earning a laugh from Hannah and a look of pure adoration from Reid. Back at the ranch, Reid was confined to bed for another week, much to his frustration. Olivia and Hannah took turns keeping him company and preventing his escape to check on ranch operations. Frank is perfectly capable, Hannah insisted, when Reid tried to rise on the 4th day. The cattle won't forget who you are in a few weeks. During those quiet days of recovery, Olivia and Reid talked for hours. She learned about his childhood on the ranch, his brief time at school in Denver, his dreams for expanding their holdings. He listened as she shared memories of her parents, her education under her father's guidance, her hopes of someday teaching. We could use a school in Pine Creek, Reid mused one afternoon. Most children get taught at home, if at all. Nearest proper school is 20 miles away. The idea took root in Olivia's mind. Do you really think there would be interest? Absolutely. Families are settling all through this valley. They want better for their children than they had. By the time Reid was well enough to leave his bed, the seed of an idea had blossomed into a plan. Olivia would write to the Territorial Education Office about requirements for establishing a small school. Reid offered a corner of his property near the main road where a schoolhouse could be built. Just a simple structure to start, he suggested. The community would help build it, I'm certain. Olivia's heart swelled at his support. It was yet another confirmation that her decision to stay had been right. Reid understood her need for purpose beyond domestic life, just as she understood his devotion to the ranch. As Reid regained his strength, he began courting Olivia properly, with Hannah's enthusiastic approval. Their first official outing was a picnic by the pond he'd shown her during their ride. Despite his still-healing shoulder, Reid insisted on arranging everything himself. I want to do this right, he explained when she protested his efforts. You deserve proper courting. Seated on a blanket beneath the cottonwoods, sharing a meal of cold chicken and Hannah's fresh bread, Olivia felt a contentment she'd feared lost forever after her parents' deaths. I never expected to find this, she admitted, watching sunlight dance on the pond's surface. When I left our homestead, I thought I was leaving behind any chance at happiness. Reid's hand covered hers. Sometimes we have to lose everything to find what truly matters. Very philosophical, Mr. Jackson, she teased. Have you been reading my father's Shakespeare? Maybe, he admitted with a grin. Hannah mentioned you miss books. I thought I should educate myself. The gesture touched her deeply. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to. His expression grew serious. I want to know everything that matters to you, Olivia. Your thoughts, your dreams, the things that make you smile. You make me smile, she said softly. More than I thought possible again. Reid's eyes darkened as he leaned closer. May I kiss you, Olivia Evans? Her heart raced as she nodded. His lips met hers with gentle pressure, a first kiss that promised many more to follow. When they parted, Olivia felt as though something fundamental had shifted within her, the last walls around her heart crumbling to dust. The weeks that followed were the happiest of Olivia's life. As summer gave way to autumn, she found herself fully integrated into ranch life. Hannah taught her to make preserves from the garden's bounty, and Reid showed her how to ride properly, laughing at her initial clumsiness, but praising her determination. News came from the Territorial Education Office they would support a school in Pine Creek if the community provided the building and Olivia could pass their examination. Reid immediately called a meeting of local families, who enthusiastically embraced the idea. "My boys need learning," declared one weathered rancher. "Can't even read their own names." Construction of the simple schoolhouse began as harvest ended. Men from throughout the valley contributed labor, while women organized a quilting bee to raise funds for books and supplies. Olivia watched with amazement as her dream took shape before her eyes. "See what you've started?" Reid said proudly as they observed the raising of the schoolhouse roof. "This valley needed someone like you." "Someone who fainted from hunger?" she teased. "Someone with vision," he corrected, his arm sliding around her waist. "Someone who believes education matters, even on the frontier." As the schoolhouse neared completion, Reid grew mysteriously busy with a project of his own. He disappeared for hours each day, refusing to explain where he'd been or what he was doing. "You'll see soon enough," was all he would say when Olivia questioned him. Hannah was equally secretive, sharing conspiratorial glances with her brother that left Olivia both curious and mildly frustrated. The mystery was revealed on a crisp October evening, when Reid asked Olivia to accompany him on a ride. "There's something I want to show you," he said, his expression a mixture of nervousness and excitement. They rode to a clearing near the main house, where a small cabin now stood. It hadn't been there the week before, and Olivia gasped in surprise. "Reid, what is this?" "See for yourself," he invited, helping her dismount. The cabin was simple but beautifully crafted, with a covered porch and large windows to catch the morning light. Inside was a single large room with a stone fireplace, already laid with wood for a fire. Bookshelves lined one wall empty now, but promising future treasures. "I thought you might want a place of your own," Reid explained as Olivia explored the space in wonder. "Somewhere to plan your lessons, to read, to have privacy." Tears sprang to her eyes at his thoughtfulness. "It's perfect. There's more." Reid took her hand and led her to the bookshelves, where a small package wrapped in brown paper sat alone on one shelf. "Open it." Inside was a leather-bound copy of Shakespeare's collected works, similar to the one her father had owned and been forced to sell before his death. "Hannah mentioned it was your favorite," Reid said softly. "I wrote to a bookseller in Denver." Olivia clutched the book to her chest, too overcome to speak. That he had remembered such a detail, had gone to such effort to replace something she'd lost, touched her more deeply than any grand gesture could have. "Olivia Evans," Reid said, taking both her hands in his. "4 months ago, you fainted at a train depot, and my life changed forever. I never believed in fate until that moment." He dropped to one knee, still holding her hands. "I love you. I want to build a life with you. Raise cattle, teach children, grow old watching sunsets from our porch. Will you marry me?" Through happy tears, Olivia nodded. "Yes. Yes, Reid Jackson, I will marry you." He rose and pulled her into his arms, sealing their promise with a kiss that spoke of all the years to come. They were married on Christmas Day in Pine Creek's small church, decorated with evergreen boughs and red berries. Hannah served as Olivia's attendant, beaming with joy as her brother and new sister exchanged vows. The entire community turned out to celebrate, filling the church and spilling onto the snowy street outside. Olivia wore a dress of deep blue wool that Hannah had helped her make, with a lace collar that had belonged to Reid's mother. Her bouquet was simple dried prairie flowers and evergreen, tied with a white ribbon. "Never seen Reid look so happy," Frank commented during the celebration that followed at the town hall. "Like he finally found the missing piece." The school opened in January with 12 students ranging from 5 to 16 years old. Olivia discovered she had a gift for teaching, just as her father had. The children responded to her patience and enthusiasm, even the older boys who had initially resisted book learning. Spring brought new calves to the ranch, and news that made the young couple's happiness complete. Olivia was expecting their first child. "A son to help with the ranch," Reid predicted, his hand gentle on her still flat stomach. "Or a daughter to help with the school," Olivia countered with a smile. "Either way, the luckiest child in the territory," he declared, pulling her close. Standing on the porch of their home, the main house, which Hannah had insisted they take while she moved into the cabin Reid had built. Olivia watched the sunset paint the hills in gold and purple. From this vantage point, she could see the schoolhouse in one direction and the cattle grazing peacefully in another. 5 years earlier, her father had dreamed of finding prosperity in the West. He hadn't lived to see it, but perhaps, Olivia thought, he would be pleased with how his daughter had fared. Not wealth in the traditional sense, but richness of purpose, community, and love. Reid joined her on the porch, wrapping his arms around her from behind, his hands resting protectively over their growing child. "Happy?" he murmured against her hair. "More than I ever imagined possible," she replied truthfully. As darkness fell and stars appeared in the vast Wyoming sky, Olivia thought of that desperate young woman who had collapsed at a train depot, certain her life was ending. Instead, it had only been beginning. The cowboy who had offered water had indeed given her a future, one filled with more purpose and joy than she could have dreamed. "Come inside," Reid said, taking her hand. "Hannah's bringing apple pie for supper." Olivia allowed him to lead her into the warmth of their home, grateful beyond words for that moment of weakness that had brought her greatest strength. In the years that followed, the Jackson Ranch prospered, as did their family. Their first child, a daughter they named Eleanor after Olivia's mother, was joined by a son 2 years later, whom they called Thomas after Reid's father. The school grew to 30 students, eventually requiring an assistant teacher whom Olivia trained herself. Letters finally arrived from Olivia's aunt in Sacramento, who had indeed received her niece's correspondence, but too late to respond before Olivia's planned arrival. Catherine expressed joy at her niece's happiness and promised to visit when the railroad connection improved. Hannah married Frank in a surprise development that delighted both Reid and Olivia. They built their own home on the ranch property, expanding the Jackson family's presence in the valley. Hannah continued to manage the household accounts with razor-sharp efficiency, while Frank's experience with cattle proved invaluable as the herd grew. On the 10th anniversary of the day, Reid found Olivia at the depot. They returned to that spot, now expanded into a proper station, as Pine Creek had grown into a thriving town. Hand in hand, they stood where fate had brought them together. "Ever regret not getting on that train to Sacramento?" Reid asked, squeezing her fingers gently. Olivia looked at the man beside her, a few silver strands now mixed with the brown in his hair, laugh lines around his eyes that hadn't been there a decade ago. She thought of their children waiting at home, of the school where generations would now learn to read and write, of the community they had helped build. "Not for a single moment," she replied, standing on tiptoe to kiss him. "This is exactly where I was meant to be.